Give me about 10 minutes and I'll probably find the right button to press. So, good evening, everyone. I hope you're doing well. Man. So, I just thought of a very, very sick, disturbing, disgusting plot line for a movie. Yeah, it just came to me. Well, it didn't quite just come to me just completely out of the blue. I've been laughing at a meme that I had shared out earlier. I'm a pretty disturbed individual, and so this is the meme I'm referring to. If the food runs out, we still have each other, and I thought it was kind of humorous, but anyway, that all of a sudden this disturbing plot line for a movie came to mind. Could you imagine, a post-apocalyptic world, right? And so some guy goes around and gets people, right? And takes them to one of those, like, factory farming locations, say, where they raise cattle or what have you. And, chains everybody up into their own little separate little stall that they're never allowed, you know what I mean? And raised just like the cattle would be raised, never allowed to go outside, never, and basically being a meat factory, right? For a post-apocalyptic world. That would be a freaky, freaky punchline. Or I should say visual more than any, not punchline, but plot line, but visual more than anything, seeing the people chained up in those, I don't know what they call them, the little stalls. That would be messed up. Anyway, somebody makes that a full feature, kick me a couple of bucks. Anyway, what other kind of disturbing stuff has been on my mind today? Just been kind of craziness across the deck here with news. A lot of issues coming up as far as the gas crisis over there in the EU, and I have a feeling it's going to get real bad before it's all said and done. Otherwise in the news, I know you probably heard a million times about Ghislaine Maxwell and her 20 years, and I don't even know. I don't know. Who knows how that's going to turn out. So, she might just wind up really, really depressed and throwing herself backwards off of a bridge with the concrete around her feet, because that's commonly how people do it. And just to make sure. Don't want to take any chances, right? I don't want to float back to the top. I probably shouldn't joke so much about stuff like that, but, well, I think of the reality of the entire situation, and that's kind of minor. What pisses me off about that whole situation is that there's a client list. And that's all we're allowed to know. Or anybody else for that matter. That, of course, isn't involved. I do not understand the people of this nation. I do not understand how there can be so many millions of us that don't just absolutely demand otherwise. How do they keep us in our stalls? Good question. How do they keep us in our stalls? I don't know. But I know that a nation like this cannot survive when injustices like this that are widely known nobody's willing to do anything, your nation's done. And of course, this isn't the only thing. You've got all the Hunter stuff. You've got you just name it. Benghazi, 9/11 itself. We could just go on and on and on. I don't know. I hope that whatever it is that we pull out of the ashes is a hell of a lot better than what it is now, or has been for many decades as far as that's concerned. Anyway, I do have several tabs open. We can hop on over there and discuss it. The last one I have open is, a story involving another story that happened yesterday, but it's a little bit of a lighter twist to the story, and I'm referring to the train accident that happened in Missouri. I have a story related to that I thought I would share. Coffee's hot. Have a couple of vapes and we'll go take a peek. Alright, most Americans are concerned about making ends meet, says a poll. It says here some 65% of Americans are concerned about being able to afford day-to-day... wow. Pardon me. Sorry. Day-to-day things, according to a YouGov CBS News poll published on Monday. Just got one of those scratchy things at the back of my throat. I hate that. Almost 3/4 of respondents, 73%, said they were worried about their ability to save money. Save? Hell. 2/3 of poll respondents were concerned about whether they could afford to take a vacation or travel. Yeah. I've never really been on what you would call an official, not what most people would consider a vacation, so don't expect me to be too upset there. While 70% said they are worried about being able to afford retirement, of those with children under the age of 18, 60% were anxious about being able to pay for childcare. These worries were part of a bleak overall outlook on the economy, with 75% of poll respondents rating it fairly bad or very bad. Asked how things in America today are going, 60% responded that it was worse than they expected at the start of the year, and fully 69% expected the economy to slow down or enter a full-blown recession within the next year. The majority, 59%, also disapproved of the job President Joe Biden was doing, particularly regarding inflation, 71% disapproving, and the economy 66% disapproving. Those two issues were similarly rated and the highest priority problems for the country to address, whereas investigating January 6, 2021 was rated dead last. Last, you don't say. Behind the coronavirus outbreak and climate change. The president has seen his approval ratings crater as inflation has soared to near all-time highs and gas prices break records on a weekly, if not daily basis. A civics poll published on Sunday put his rating at an all-time low of 32%, with consumer sentiment plunging to a record low of 50 in the University of Michigan's last reading for June. Another poll conducted last week found a whopping 97% of Americans believe rising prices were a crisis, or at the very least a problem, with gas prices singled out as particularly dire issue, and 91% of respondents say they believe the president has at least some power to get soaring costs under control, while Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen recently insisted a recession was not inevitable. Many economists disagree, and some predict the U.S. will not be the only nation thus impacted. The CEO of Deutsche Bank has warned a global recession is likely before the end of 2023. So, interesting. I do think we're in for a heck of a bumpy ride, without a doubt. And to be honest, I see a lot of people discussing different, aspects of it. And I don't know if a lot of them are really hitting how bad it's going to be. Like, fuel rationing and stuff like that has came up. And, some people think it, would be a good long while before we would see something like that. And I don't think that's necessarily true. I think it all depends. I mean, no doubt it all depends. Number one, there already is a bit of a crisis going on with that. And if we do wind up in a global, conflict, they're going to real quick start rationing fuel. Real quick. Along with a lot of other things, I'm pretty sure. I mean, you have to think about it. With the current issues we have with supply chain issues and what have you, war is only going to exacerbate that tenfold. So, and there's a lot of items that probably won't even be available to us for a while. So, yeah, I do think if we do get involved in a global conflict, I do think you'll see gas rationing happen real quick. Real quick. And I think we're already kind of teetering now. So, 1 in 4 Germans fear losing job due to Ukraine crisis, says a survey. It says here, let's see. Nearly a quarter of German workers are afraid to lose their jobs due to the impact of conflict in Ukraine and related to anti-Russia sanctions on the country's economy. The Berliner Zeitung, newspaper reported on Tuesday, citing a survey by the market research institute Trendence. According to the survey, 23.3% out of the 1,830 working Germans interviewed said they were concerned about losing their employment because of the war in Ukraine, while nearly half, 44.8% of those surveyed, are forced to work from home due to high gasoline prices resulting from the sanctions war between Russia and the West. Furthermore, 49.2% of respondents also said they experienced mental stress because of the photos appearing in the media from the war zone, and every second respondent said their employers should support Ukrainian war refugees. According to the survey, the consequences of the war are also making themselves felt at universities. Of the 1,777 students surveyed, 35% said they felt anxiety about their professional future. Germany is suffering a cost of living crisis, with annual inflation hitting a 50-year high last month at 7.9% amid soaring global energy prices. Propelled by Ukraine-related sanctions against Russia, the potential ban of Russian energy has also taken a toll on German industries, with many fearing closures due to the loss of energy supplies. Consumer confidence in the German economy heading into July plunged to negative 27.4 points, to its lowest on record, while wage growth expectations fell to a 20-year low of negative 33.5 points from negative 23.7 points in June, according to the research company GfK. So, you got Americans that aren't feeling too hot. You got Germans that aren't feeling too hot. And while, at least for the time being, I think we're in a little better position than what Germany is. No, I don't know how long, but for the time being anyway, Germany is at its breaking point in many ways. Fuel, of course, is one of them. Germany sounds gas crisis alarm. Germany's Federal Network Agency announced on Monday that the situation with natural gas in the country was tense and may further deteriorate. The regulator stated that it was monitoring the situation very closely and is in constant contact with gas industry enterprises. However, it noted the gas supplies to the country are stable at present. The level of gas occupancy in storage facilities exceeds 60%, according to the agency. The head of the German Association of Energy and Water Industries, Kirsten Andrei, pointed out that because of Russian sanctions, Germany has to bet on coal. We are displacing gas in order to become more independent of fossil fuel and Russian gas. Berlin announced earlier that the country had made a bitter decision to restart coal power plants in order to cope with a possible energy crisis this coming winter. This month, Russian gas flows to Germany throughout the undersea Nord Stream pipeline were cut by as much as 60% due to technical issues arising from Western sanctions against Moscow. In response to this, the German government launched a second alarm phase of its three-level gas emergency plan. Berlin has warned it's facing a severe shortage of the fuel amid diminishing flows from Russia. I wonder what the third level is. They bomb Russia. Hard to say. I guess we got some kind of special race going on tonight or something like that. I hear race cars on the track, so. Alright. EU state warns of gas crisis domino effect. A gas crisis in any one EU country would provoke a domino effect and quickly spread throughout the bloc, according to Dutch Climate and Energy Minister Rob Jetten. It's good if some member states can fill their gas storages by November 1st, but if other countries fail to reach 80%, particularly big countries like Germany, then you have to be aware that this will be a domino effect for the whole of Europe, Jetten told Political Magazine on Tuesday. The minister noted that in the event of a cessation of the Russian gas supply, the Netherlands will stand with neighboring countries. Meanwhile, Jetten stressed that tapping the Groningen gas field, once one of Europe's largest and the continent's major source for gas for decades, would be an option of last resort. In 2019, the Dutch government announced that the giant area in the northeastern part of the country would be shuttered by October 2022 to limit seismic risks in the region, with gas only to be extracted thereafter in the event of extreme weather or unforeseen circumstances. Last week, the nation lifted all restrictions on coal-fired power stations to reduce natural gas consumption while making an urgent appeal to businesses to save as much energy as possible ahead of the winter season. Jetten plans to present a plan this week on building 2 nuclear power plants in the country. So, it's crazy. Absolutely nuts. And we have to pay close attention to this stuff, because a lot of this stuff could come here. A lot of it could. Hang on. Alright, sorry about that. I mean, we're already starting to see quite a bit happen, but... Alright. Fuel shortage may force shutdown of public transport. Sri Lanka has halted sales of gasoline to the public for 2 weeks amid a severe fuel shortage, Cabinet of Ministers spokesman Bandula Gunawardene said on Monday. The Cabinet of Ministers decided to issue fuel for only essential services from midnight today until July 10th. Gunawardene, I don't know how to say that, told reporters as cited by a number of news outlets. Pretty sure that's supposed to be a C, not an S. According to the official, fuel will only be supplied to essential services such as healthcare, agriculture, and food transportation. Gunawardene also warned of a potential public transportation shutdown in the coming days and said the authorities have urged employers to allow people to work from home. Sri Lanka is in the grip of simultaneous fuel and food crisis brought on by the consequences of the COVID-19 pandemic, which caused a downturn in tourism and led to a shortage of foreign currency. As a result, Sri Lanka is unable to pay for imports, and due to a default that was declared on its external debt in mid-April, the country can no longer borrow funds from foreign investors. According to reports citing the state energy company Ceylon Petroleum Corporation, Sri Lanka as of Monday had barely enough fuel stored to last one day. The same day, negotiators were sent to Qatar and Russia to secure more supplies to refill the depleted storages. The latest crisis has sparked protests across the country, which have been going on for months, especially in the capital, Colombo. Protesters are demanding the resignation of President Gotabaya Rajapaksa for mismanagement. So, should probably fire me for my inability to say foreign names. Because I suck at it. Oh, man. Pentagon struggling with recruitment, says the media. Well, I wouldn't know why. The Pentagon is scrambling for ways to find new recruits as multiple branches fear they will not reach their annual enrollment goals, with the number of young Americans willing to join the military hitting its lowest level in 15 years. Well, you could do what the Ukrainians are doing and hit all the nightclubs and round them up. Oh yeah, they haven't enacted the draft yet. Then I do expect you to see that. And I know that ain't gonna be a real popular opinion, but I do expect that once this kicks off, I don't think they're gonna waste much time, and I don't think it's just gonna be the boys. I think they're gonna go for boys and girls. And I think, to be honest, that they've been building up that for quite a while. Because it sat there, you know, the entire time they were trying to push women into more combat roles and stuff like that. I was saying then, oh, they're gonna open the draft up. You watch it. They're gonna open the draft up for girls too. And mark my words, once this kicks off, you're gonna see the draft reopened, and when they do, it won't just be the boys. It'll be the girls too. And unfortunately, I have a feeling it's going to be at least accepted enough that they won't be stopped. So, and I've got an issue with that. Maybe there's something wrong with that. I don't know. Some people would say that that's the wrong mindset to have or whatever. I don't like the idea of women going into combat. Just not a fan of it. I mean, if it's something that they absolutely want to do, well, go for it. I don't, you know what I mean? But, you know, as far as just putting them right there on that front line in infantry positions and stuff like that, it's not that I don't think that they're capable. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do, to be real honest, with a man's natural reactions. I just have a feeling that they would wind up getting themselves in a lot of bad spots because the men would try to, more or less, in my opinion, I think they would try to protect the female. And I think that could cause problems. You know, if their role was to do a particular job and they don't fulfill their role because they abandoned their role so they could go protect, you know, the woman, that's putting them in a bad spot. And I can see that happening. And I don't mean disrespect to anyone on any of that. That's what I see as an issue with that. Not only that, but just that. In my opinion, we're supposed to protect women, not put them out there for cannon fodder. And again, maybe that's the wrong opinion to have. And if it is, it is, you know? I'm not saying I always got the right opinions on things or that I always see things necessarily the right way. I'm like any other human being, and I have selfish thoughts too. So, and that's what that is. In reality, you break it down, it's a selfish thought. It's absolutely, in no way whatsoever, any of my business if a woman wants to go fight in combat. It's none of my business. It is what it is. Turkey reaches NATO deal with Finland and Sweden. Turkey will support inviting Finland and Sweden into NATO at the bloc's upcoming summit in Spain, Finnish President Sauli Niinisto announced on Tuesday after a meeting with his Turkish counterpart Recep Tayyip Erdogan and Swedish Prime Minister Magdalena Andersson. The three countries signed a memorandum of understanding at the meeting organized with the support of NATO Secretary Jens Stoltenberg. The concrete steps for accession to NATO will be agreed among NATO allies over the next 2 days, but that decision is now imminent, said Niinisto. I am pleased that this stage on Finland's journey towards NATO membership has been completed. And this is something to pay very close attention to. According to Turkey, Finland and Sweden pledged to condemn terrorism in all its forms, and in their support for organizations Ankara has designated as terrorist, including the Kurdish groups PKK and YPG, as well as the movement led by the exiled cleric Fethullah Gulen, which the Turkish government refers to as FETÖ. Turkey got what it wanted, Erdogan said in a statement after the deal was announced. Speaking at a press conference after the meeting, Stoltenberg said that Finland and Sweden will become observers in NATO at the upcoming summit. He added that the memorandum includes provisions on fighting terrorism and arms exports, including adopting stricter national legislation. So, this is definitely going to be seen by Russia as a massive escalation. So, be mindful and watchful of this. They are getting it tonight on that track. I don't know if they've got some special races or something tonight. It's hard to say. Alright, is this the one I just read? Hang on. Yeah, it is, okay. I'm gonna say, I thought that was the one I just read. More weapons to Ukraine, more missions on the ground, Russia warns West. So Russia's telling them right out how they're going to respond. Pumping up Ukraine with Western weapons will only lead Russia to perform more missions on the ground, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said on Tuesday. Speaking at a press conference, the minister claimed that the position of the West when it comes to the situation in Ukraine was absolutely counterproductive and harmful. The more weapons is pumped in Ukraine, the longer this conflict will last, the longer the agony of the Nazi regime, which is supported by Western capitals, will last, he said. In this context, Lavrov commented on the Ukrainian and Western politicians in accusations related to a shopping mall in the Ukrainian city of Kremenchug, allegedly hit on Monday by the Russian forces. The minister referred to the earlier statement by the Russian Defense Ministry, according to which the military targeted a hangar with American and European weapons and ammunition. Detonations set fire to the shopping center, which was empty, Lavrov stressed. I am saying it to emphasize the fact that the longer weapons are supplied, which are designed to prolong the conflict, prolong the suffering of civilians who constantly live under shelling by the Ukrainian neo-Nazi movement, the more missions we will perform on the ground, Lavrov said. He added that these missions will be completed. Lavrov's remarks came as the leaders of G7 agreed to continue supporting Ukraine both militarily and financially for as long as it takes. So, they don't intend to quit anytime soon. And I know you're all going to be really surprised about this, and I'm sure you've already heard about it. Senate Security Chief on January 6th dies before surprise hearing. Imagine that. Michael Stenger, former Senate Sergeant-at-Arms who oversaw security during Capitol Hill riot on January 6, 2021, has died. News of Stinger's death came hours after the Democrat-led January 6 committee announced a surprise hearing. Stinger's death was confirmed late on Monday night by Fox News' Chad Pergram and Politico's Catherine Tolley McManus. Stinger's family has not commented on his death, and the circumstances of his passing are unclear. Tolley McManus stated that Stinger died on Monday morning. As the Senate Sergeant of Arms, Stinger was in charge of the security for the upper chamber of Congress on January 6, 2021. Following a speech by then-President Donald Trump that day, a crowd of Trump supporters descended on the Capitol to protest the certification of Joe Biden's electoral victory. Some were waved into the Capitol by police, while others forced their way in. 3 protesters died of natural causes, and 1 was shot dead by a Capitol police officer. I think that's a little bit off. A police officer died of natural causes the following day. 2 police officers died by suicide later, one of them only 4 days after the riot. Actually, no, this is correct. I thought it was calling the officers protesters, but no, it wasn't. Hours before the news of Stinger's death broke, the Democrat-led committee investigating the riot announced that it would hold a surprise hearing on Tuesday to present recently obtained evidence and receive witness testimony. Stinger resigned in the aftermath of the January 6th riot after a Department of Homeland Security report blamed him, along with the former Capitol Police Chief Stephen Sund and former House Sergeant at Arms Paul Irving, for failing to request National Guard assistance in time. Some Republicans and conservative pundits have suggested that House Speaker Nancy Pelosi influenced his decision not to summon the National Guard, citing major inconsistencies in the testimonies of Stinger, Sund, and Irving. In his own testimony to the Senate after the riot, Stinger called for investigations into the role professional agitators may have played in stoking the riot. Stinger never testified to the House January 6 committee. Imagine that, huh? Stinger did not elaborate on who these agitators may have been, but some Trump supporters have argued the FBI-linked provocateurs were among the mob on January 6 and actively incited the crowd to break the law. And this is not anything new. And it happens whether it's, for the January 6 people on the right, or whether it's in the protests in the streets of Portland, and you got Antifa and Black Bloc and all that. I'm telling you, these are coming from the same place. Coming from the same place. It's what they do. It's what they do. This is the last tab I have for you before the headlines. This is the story I was telling you about earlier. Boy Scouts played major rescue role after Amtrak train derailed. Says here, 2 Boy Scout troops from Wisconsin played a major role in the rescue when an Amtrak train derailed in Missouri after hitting a dump truck at an uncontrolled crossing. The Boy Scouts from Appleton were on the train, which was traveling from Los Angeles to Chicago when it derailed. They jumped into action, breaking windows, helping people off the train, and attempting to save the life of the dump truck driver who died. 2 mothers with whom WBAY spoke Monday night said the Scouts are shaken but proud to being able to help after the devastating crash. It was a phone call that no parent should ever have to receive. It was probably way up there on that scariest moments of my life, said Nicole Tierney, whose son Owen was on the train. Until I heard from my son an hour later that he was okay, I couldn't stop shaking or crying, said Sarah Birkin, whose son Isaac was also on board. Scott Armstrong, Director of National Media Relations with the Boy Scouts of America, said there were 16 youth who were 13 to 17 years old and 8 adults on the train. They were members of Troops 73 and 12, which are chartered with First English Lutheran Church in Appleton, according to a Boy Scout source. They were returning home from a week-long backpacking trip at a high-adventure wilderness camp in New Mexico. 2 of the adults were taken to hospitals. WBAY reports that one suffered a cracked vertebra and the other had 7 broken ribs and a bruised lung. Armstrong said everyone else was put on a school bus and taken to a hospital to be checked out as a precaution. They all had cuts and bruises, but nothing serious. He said parents said one scout could be kept into the hospital overnight, but his injuries aren't life-threatening. A scout leader said the scouts who weren't injured among the first people on the train to help render aid. Armstrong said the scouts on the train provided aid to people who needed it. One scout from Appleton provided comfort to the driver of the dump truck who was ejected in the crash until the driver passed away. I'm proud of them. One scout took his shirt off, wrapped his hand to break some windows to get people out. Another scout went and comforted the driver of the truck that was hit and tried to stabilize him, said Don I don't know how to say that name, scoutmaster of Troop 73. They were tandem working on that gentleman when he expired, so that scout is pretty shook up. The response of the scouts has now put the troop in the national spotlight, especially with the organization. These scouts are highly trained. They would have received advanced first aid training prior to going, including their adult leaders would have had people with wilderness first aid certification, which is pretty advanced course, Armstrong said. Luckily, they had that training because I'm sure they put it to use today. Tierney said she is very proud of how some of our boys helped with some of the injured passengers and how they were willing to put themselves aside. That's just what Boy Scouts do. We just can't wait to get them home. It's unclear when the Scouts will be able to return home. WBAY reports they were being put up in different hotels Monday night. So I thought that was kind of a good story to come out of that train crash yesterday. Right on to those kids. You know, I was, like many people, highly frustrated when that organization got woke. I'm sure it still does plenty of good, but alright. Let's read some headlines. Let me have a couple of babes. We're doing okay on time. It's not bad because I pretty much read the entirety of those articles and I had quite a few of them up there, so not too bad. Alright. Pentagon struggling with... Oh, I covered that. Duh. U.S. governor threatens abortion doctors with prosecution. Court backtracks on Biden's vaccine mandate. Oh yeah, 46 people found dead in a truck in Texas. I'm sure you've heard about this. NATO summit kicks off in Spain. Russia comments on alleged mall strike in Ukraine. U.S. presidential advisors debate Ukraine's chances of success, says CNN. Britain attempts to lure Russian talent. Attack on Crimea could spark World War III, says Medvedev. A Swiss bank guilty of laundering drug money, says media. G7 nations reach deal on Russian oil price cap, says Politico. UK raises concerns about Ukraine fatigue. Major hotel chain quits Russia. Howdy, Hexapoose. Yeah, it is. It's a shame. It really, truly is. That was a really, really good organization. Let's see. LPR claims it was hit with HIMARS for the first time. Let's see. Foreign mercenary shot allied Ukrainian troops, says Moscow. Hungary reiterates its stance on Russia sanctions. Macron reveals if Saudis and UAE can rapidly ramp up oil output. West makes vow on Russian food supply. Biden skips G7 finale and gives no speech. Probably went out for ice cream. Hopefully he didn't go out for another bike ride, because Senate Security Chief on January... Oh, I covered that. Now is the time for independence, says Scotland's First Minister. Local Ukrainian mayor explains casualties at shopping mall. If I can spit it out. Russia sanctions Biden's wife and daughter. I'm sure they're terribly upset. Extreme weather breaks city record of nearly 150 years. 1 in 4 Germans fears losing... Oh, I covered that. Moscow gives recipe for fast-tracking to Ukraine conflict end. A Russian space agency mocks NATO. Japanese automaker suspends production in Russia. Covered that. Anti-Russia alliance explores oil options. A 101-year-old concentration camp guard is convicted. Remember that, those of you that are lording over us right now. 101 years old and still got convicted. So remember that when the new Nuremberg trials begin. Macron refuses to designate Russia a sponsor of terrorism. U.S. prohibits U.S. prohibits Russian gold imports. Let's see. Reporter who exposed Kiev's lies about mass rapes branded state enemy. Let's see. NATO chief wants climate-friendly militaries. So I want you to blow the hell out of each other. You know, just be eco-friendly about it. Right. Russians in Arctic face Norwegian blockade. Germany sounds gas... covered that. A World of Tanks cheat creator admits guilt at trial. Yeah, I mean, creates a cheat for a game, he's going to jail. Impact of refugee exodus on Ukraine's demographics evaluated. Smirnoff vodka is leaving Russia. I thought, wow. And I thought, that would certainly be Russian. I guess not. Who'd have thunk it? Bulgaria expels dozens of Russian diplomats. Biden knew about his son's overseas deals, voicemail shows. Of course, most people would probably think USA when you think Budweiser, but that's not the case. Jeffrey Epstein's accomplice, Ghislaine Maxwell, sentenced to prison. And a high level of depression leading to suicide. Oh, not yet? Okay. I'm sorry, I got ahead by a couple of days probably. Ukraine confirms Russian missile hit plant adjacent to burned down shopping mall. Dozens killed in prison riot. U.S. stops tanker with Russian oil, says media. Hairdressers threatened with fines for over-shampooing. So if you're a hairdresser and you're over-shampooing, you better knock it off. Gonna have to pay the piper. Driving alone is helping Putin, says a Ukrainian MP. Remember, Remember when Americans were told something similar? That driving an SUV, driving a big vehicle was supporting the terrorists. Remember that? China mocks G7. Drug lab busted at nuke hosting a NATO base. Or nuke hosting NATO base. So that's, great news that, drug labs are at or NATO bases where the nukes are. Huh. Good news. Oxfam condemns G7 for leaving millions to starve. UN Security Council debates Ukraine crisis. Let's see, and that's it. That's the headlines, and I'm done 10 minutes early. Wow. That's surprising. I actually thought I was going to have to rush through it to get all the articles read, but didn't do too bad. Anyway, I'm going to take advantage of it. I got to take trash out anyway. And get the hell out of here, and God willing, we'll talk to you tomorrow. So I appreciate everybody coming. Hope to see you tomorrow night. As always, God bless you. We love you. Be one with your spirit. And shalom.